Have you ever seen a teacher get fired for saving a student's life? I went to a high school where the administration cared more about their reputation than student safety. The principal was this power-hungry woman who treated students like prisoners and teachers like servants. One day, they introduced this absolutely insane zero-tolerance policy about phones. Apparently, they thought students were too distracted by their devices during class, and test scores were suffering. So they announced that any student caught with a phone during school hours would get immediate suspension. I'm talking about a complete ban. Phones had to be locked in your locker from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. No exceptions whatsoever. Teachers weren't even allowed to hold student phones anymore, and they installed signal jammers throughout the building. The rule was so strict that kids started getting suspended for having their phones vibrate in their backpacks during class. I literally watched honor roll students get 3-day suspensions just because their phone screen lit up during a test. One kid got suspended because his mom called during his dad's heart attack, and the phone rang in his locker down the hall. The teachers were terrified of losing their jobs, so they started reporting students for the smallest violations. It was like living in a dystopian nightmare where basic communication was forbidden. But that was nothing compared to what happened to Sarah, a type 1 diabetic girl in my chemistry class. Our chemistry teacher, Mr. Rodriguez, was this amazing guy who genuinely cared about his students. He was the type of teacher who stayed after school to help struggling kids and brought snacks for students who couldn't afford lunch. But the principal had already written him up twice for being too lenient with the phone policy, and he was basically on thin ice. So when Sarah's continuous glucose monitor started beeping loudly during our lab experiment, he was in an absolutely impossible situation. The device was connected to her phone, and it was alerting her that her blood sugar was dropping dangerously low into hypoglycemic range. She needed to check her exact levels immediately and probably take glucose tablets or call her parents. But Mr. Rodriguez couldn't let her use her phone without risking his job and pension. I could see Sarah getting paler by the minute, her hands starting to shake uncontrollably as she tried to focus on mixing chemicals. She was sweating profusely and kept blinking rapidly like she was having trouble seeing. Other students started noticing something was wrong, but nobody knew what to do because we weren't allowed to have phones to call for help. She whispered to Mr. Rodriguez that she felt dizzy and needed to check her blood sugar immediately, but he said his hands were tied because of the policy and he could lose his job. That's when Sarah collapsed. She hit the concrete floor hard and started having a full-blown seizure right there in front of everyone. Kids were screaming and backing away in terror. Mr. Rodriguez immediately grabbed her phone from her backpack and called 911.